You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Park Rangers Locked On Cougs here, and as we're talking through the first depth chart of the year, and I stress the reason this one sticks out to me is more important than, I don't think we'll do this every week or every game week unless there's other sizable changes, but this is the first, okay, they're coming out and telling us what's going to happen. Yes, in Big 12 games this year, we will get injury reports a couple days out and then again right before the game and so on, but this is kind of an insight as to who's looking like they're going to take a starting spot or who's got a starting spot right now as we head into things. And after all the conversation, I do think it's worth pointing out that Austin Carlisle, backup quarterback, freshman quarterback, a really big prospect at quarterback when he came in, is not listed anywhere. There was talk about him being a special teams guy. I do think in my heart of hearts that that's really because this is a true two deep. And instead of having Zeon Chris or Austin Carlisle, they just listed Zeon Chris as the second because Austin Carlisle is the third right now as far as quarterbacks go in the game. And he's not listed on the punt returning or kick returning. They do list Mekhi Muse as doing both of those. They have Jaquise Martin as the other kick returner and DJ Butler as the other punt returner. You know, three guys play four spots. Could you see Austin Carlisle out there with the kind of top tier speed potentially? We also heard Fritz make jokes about him catching the ball, and those jokes may be more than just jokes. We'll see. I do think so. Zeon Chris is a true dual threat quarterback. If he was not the kind of runner he is, I think you'd have to have a package for Carlisle to get on the field. I wonder if they're thinking, can we preserve a red shirt for Austin Carlisle and use that go gadget kind of package with a running quarterback with Zeon? We'll see. But him being not on this just means he's not a second string. I don't think that says anything else besides that. What was interesting to me, and a position I can see going back and forth every week, is Mark Stampley being just ahead of Rook Brown at one of their flex position on the defensive backfield. Mark Stampley transferred Georgia Southern, but big time transfer. Rook Brown transfer from Wyoming, and that interesting back and forth there again. I think they'll both play. Stampley's listed as a starter now, but they're both really high-end talents from smaller schools that were frankly pretty coveted by a lot of people coming out of those smaller schools. And they're playing the same position, that hybrid. They're calling it the star position, but it's a hybrid defensive back kind of position. Could see that flip every week. They're both very talented guys. Rook Brown in Wyoming was on the team that I forget if they beat or should have beat Tech, whatever year that was, but big time football player. Mark Stampley is a really, really talented athlete himself. And so we'll see there. Interesting. Okay, we opened the show talking about freshmen playing. And so we'll close the show talking about freshmen playing. Eddie Walls is listed as the starting field side defensive lineman. Eddie Walls is 6'4", 250, and I thoroughly enjoy his highlight tape. I want to start by saying that Eddie Walls is really good. He does feel specialist-like to me as far as being a pass rusher. And look, sacks get you paid. I totally get it. Go do your thing. But what's interesting to me is not that he's listed as the starter, as number 90 field side defensive lineman, but his backup is true freshman Rashad Sterling. Now, Sterling is 6'3", 250. He's big, strong, fast, four-star true freshman out of Lutcher, Louisiana. And Eddie Walls is a senior transfer from FIU. I should say that too. Sterling is he's a younger guy and a more undeveloped guy. He's also a true, well-rounded defensive end, right? And Eddie Walls feels like the specialist. And so what I could see here happening is the freshman that may actually play a lot more, the true freshman that plays a lot more on this whole depth chart, is not the Carlisle name we hear about a lot because he's a quarterback, or Chance Bryant's listed as a starter because he plays his own position kind of out here, or whatever. The freshman that could play a lot might actually be Rashad Sterling, because even though he doesn't get called the quote starter, He's a well-rounded football player playing behind a guy that's kind of got. Again, I don't mean to say that Eddie Walls can't do the other stuff, but he's a lot better at this one thing, right? And so, do you see him getting more reps there? Will be interesting to follow on Thursday. Other news and notes I will point out. Another Duarte thing I saw him put out there was that they're putting out informationals on the football team for media. 28 guys in the roster were signed to the 2024 class. 45 guys in the roster were signed to the 2025 class. That makes up, if my math is correct here, 73 guys that have come into the roster that are on the present roster since the coaching swap, right? That tells you a lot about the shift in culture of this program. See it that bluntly. Now, they don't say the coaching swap happened after the class 2023, but it's certainly something that anyone paying attention understands, right? And for what it's worth, of the holdovers, it looks like 5 or 6 of them will start. Jalen Garner is listed as the starting will, linebacker spot. Demetrius Pancake Hunter is the center. We mentioned Boogie. Latrell McCutcheon technically transferred in the Dana Holgerson era, but wasn't allowed to play that year under the old transfer rules back then. His brother Latrevion, obviously a starter, and then Rashad is kind of a starter with this backfield of everyone that no one's listed as the official starter. That speaks to me very highly of the job that Fritz and company, right? Willie and Wes and the whole staff have done in putting together a culture and a roster that fits that culture, right? We talk about the rebuild in terms of you got a bus. You got to get the guys off the bus that don't need to be there. You got to get the guys on the bus that do need to be there. You got to get the bus in drive, and then you can start going once they're on the right seats, right? They got a lot of guys off the bus. They've now got a lot of guys on the bus. They get them in the right seats, this thing starts moving forward, right? And I think it's that simple. And I think it happens this Thursday. And now, obviously, FCS opponents, you hope those kind of things go your way because otherwise it's a little embarrassing. You're on TV the next day. But we'll be breaking it down more throughout the week. We'll also be live after the game. So make sure you hit subscribe and the bell so you know that we are live. Locked on Cougs, primarily locked on. Oh, trivia questions. Almost forgot trivia questions. Notes, Parker, notes. Last thing we asked was you last played an FCS school in 2019. Who was the leading scorer in that game? Was the kicker, Dalton Weatherspoon, who had 13 points, which, again, 37 points against Prairie View was not the best outing they've ever had, but it's what 2019 was. Today's trivia question, which will be answered next time on Locked on Cougs, is how many players and coaches from the University of Houston, assuming some of these names on this depth chart are going to have a big-time career, Hall of Fame type of career, how many Houston Cougars are in the College Football Hall of Fame? College Football Hall of Fame. Tell us comments down below. We'll be answering it next time. Locked on Cougs. Remember, the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs.